The forest was never supposed to be this quiet. Private Daniel Cross paused mid-step, his boots sinking into the wet soil as a cold wind whispered through shattered branches. Moonlight was thin tonight, barely enough to outline the dead trees and torn earth. But Daniel didn't need light to feel danger. He could smell it, hear it, taste it in the air, like iron. Behind him, far behind him now, the battle still echoed in scattered fragments. A distant explosion, a scream swallowed by chaos. And then, nothing. His unit was gone, cut down, scattered, swallowed whole by a German ambush that erupted like a trapdoor beneath their feet. He should have died with them. He knew that. Every soldier who survives long enough can recognize the moment where fate simply misses. For Daniel, that moment happened 12 minutes ago. He'd been thrown to the ground when the mortar hit, dirt filling his mouth, shrapnel slicing across his shoulder. When he crawled from the smoke, he saw bodies. His brothers. Lying still, some face down, some reaching for weapons they never got to fire. Others, he didn't want to look at all. He should have been one of them, but he wasn't, and somehow, that felt worse. Now he walked alone, deeper into enemy territory, guided only by instinct and a voice in his head whispering, "Move. If you stop, you die." That voice sounded like his sergeant, Mason Hale, the man who could make thunder sound polite. Just trust your feet, Cross, they know where to go. Daniel hoped Hale was right, because right now his feet were all he had. The forest floor was littered with broken artillery, rusted helmets, and the forgotten debris of old battles. Europe was full of ghost fields like this, places where every step felt like trespassing on someone's final memory. A twig snapped. Daniel froze. Not because he was afraid. Fear had already moved into his skull, but because the sound was too clean, too deliberate. Not wind, not an animal. Someone else was here. He lowered himself slowly, breathing shallow, eyes scanning the tree line. Nothing. Just darkness shifting over more darkness. Another sound. Boot leather. Brushing dry leaves. Not imagination. Daniel raised his rifle. "Who's there?" he whispered. No answer. Only the faint smell of cigarette smoke. Sharp, unmistakable. German tobacco. Enemy patrol. He couldn't outrun them. Couldn't fight a whole squad alone. Not bleeding. Not disoriented. Not after what he'd survived. So he did the one thing every soldier is trained to do only when all options fail. He disappeared. Dropping into the mud, he crawled into a cluster of fallen logs, pressing himself into the cold earth. He didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Didn't exist. Footsteps approached. Slow. Heavy. Confident. German voices murmured. Too close. One soldier laughed softly. Boot stopped just a few feet from Daniel's hiding place. His fingers tightened on the trigger. If they found him, he wouldn't go quietly. Death stood beside him now. Waiting. Listening. Ready. But fate wasn't finished with him yet. Not tonight. Not here. Not like this. Because something unexpected was about to happen. Something that would change everything. The German patrol had stopped so close. Daniel could see their boots through the cracks in the fallen logs. Thick leather, mud-caked, the kind worn by men who had marched too far and fought too long. Their shadows stretched across the ground like dark ropes, pulling the night tighter around him. Daniel fought the trembling in his arms. His muscles screamed. The cut on his shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. But he didn't move. Stillness was survival. One of the Germans kicked at the ground. A voice muttered, irritated. "Vielleicht ist er weitergelaufen." Maybe he ran farther. Another replied, "Oder ist tot," or he's dead. They laughed softly, not cruelly, but confidently, like hunters who believed the forest already belonged to them. Daniel swallowed, throat dry as dust. Their voices were casual, light, almost relaxed. They didn't think anyone could challenge them now, and they were right. Daniel wasn't here to fight. He was here to live. The patrol lingered, scanning the forest with lazy confidence. One soldier took out a cigarette. The spark lit his face for a split second, just long enough for Daniel to memorize him. Sharp jawline, thin beard, a half-smile that didn't know how close death was standing beside him. Smoke drifted into Daniel's hiding place. He held his breath. His lungs screamed for air. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Finally, the patrol moved on, bootsteps fading into the trees, voices swallowed by darkness. Daniel waited, and waited, and waited longer, because the deadliest mistake a soldier can make is assuming danger has passed. After a full minute, he lifted his head. No shadows, no voices, no movement, just silence. He slid out from the logs, stifling a groan as pain ripped down his side. His uniform was caked with mud. Blood seeped through his shoulder. But he was alive. He checked his gear. Canteen, half full. Ammo. 2 magazines. Compass. Cracked, but readable. Worst of all, he was completely alone. Faces flashed in his mind. Mason Hale, carved from stone. Adler, the quiet scout. Phillips, humming country songs at night. Were they gone? Or somewhere in this forest? Waiting. Daniel forced himself forward. North. Toward home. Hopefully. The forest stretched endlessly. Moonlight glinted off ruined helmets and old craters. Every rustle became a threat. Every shadow felt alive. Eventually, the trees parted just enough to reveal an old battlefield. Bunkers, trenches, scars of a forgotten fight. Daniel crouched. Studied the ground. Bootprints. American. Fresh. His breath caught. Someone. Survived. Before he could think, a soft crunch echoed behind him. Not wind. Not an animal. A human. He spun, rifle raised, and froze. A familiar face stood before him. Pale. Bleeding. Barely standing. Adler. A brother he thought he lost forever. For a moment, Daniel couldn't breathe. The figure swaying in front of him. Helmet missing. Uniform torn. Blood soaking his sleeve to the fingertips. But the eyes. Brown. Steady. Sharp even through pain. He knew those eyes. Adler, Daniel whispered. The scout blinked, as if making sure Daniel wasn't just a ghost born from exhaustion. Cross. Adler's voice cracked. You're alive. Relief hit Daniel so hard his knees nearly gave out. Adler. Quiet. Dependable Adler. The man who noticed danger before danger noticed them. If Adler survived, maybe fate hadn't abandoned them completely. Daniel rushed forward, catching him before he fell. What happened to you? Daniel asked. Mortar. Shrapnel. Adler winced as Daniel eased him down. Lost the others. Thought I was the only one left. Daniel shook his head gently. You're not. Not tonight. Adler closed his eyes, relief softening his hard features. But when he opened them again, fear replaced the relief. Cross. The Germans are sweeping the woods. Big patrols. Dogs. They know survivors escaped the ambush. Daniel stiffened. He had just escaped a patrol minutes ago. If Adler was right, and Adler was always right, the forest wasn't random danger anymore. It was a trap. How many? Daniel asked. Too many, Adler whispered. I heard trucks. Radios. They're pushing inward from 3 sides. A tightening noose. Daniel tore a strip from his undershirt and wrapped Adler's bleeding arm. Adler winced. We don't have long. We move together, Daniel said. We follow the ridge north. Avoid open ground. Adler shook his head weakly. I'm slowing you down. Not leaving you, Daniel snapped. Adler managed a faint smile. Sergeant Hale would be proud. Hale. The name hit Daniel like a knife. His shout during the ambush still echoed in his skull. Adler pointed deeper into the forest. We need shelter before dawn. And water. Daniel nodded, helping him up. Every step felt like borrowed time. They followed a narrow deer trail, hidden beneath leaves. Darkness thickened around them, branches twisting like skeletal hands. Cross, wait, stop, Adler whispered suddenly. Daniel froze. Adler crouched, pointed to the dirt. Bootprints. German. Fresh. They're circling, Daniel murmured. No, Adler whispered. They're driving us. Daniel understood instantly. This was a funnel. A kill zone ahead. Machine guns. Ambush points. A perfect trap. We can't go north, Adler said. It's the only path home, Daniel whispered. It's a graveyard, Adler replied. That's where they want us. Daniel thought hard. Then quietly. Then we go west. Adler stared. West? That's deeper into enemy lines. Exactly, Daniel said. They'll never expect it. Adler sighed. You're talking to the wrong guy about silence. Daniel smirked. Then lead the way. Adler took point, limping but alert. Daniel scanned the rear, rifle ready. The forest watched them, creaked around them, breathed against their necks. Then, a dog barked. Close. Adler froze. They're right behind us. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. Then we moved faster. They slipped deeper into the trees, hearts pounding, wounds throbbing, every step a fight against exhaustion. The dog barked again. Closer. Then a German voice shouted. They'd been found. The German shout ripped through the forest, like a gunshot tearing the night apart. Adler didn't need to translate. Daniel didn't need to think. They ran. Branches lashed their faces. Roots snagged their boots. Cold night air stabbed their lungs with every breath. Behind them came the sound Daniel feared most. A barking dog, Fast, hungry, trained to kill. Adler stumbled, catching himself on a tree, his wound slowing him. Daniel grabbed his arm immediately. "Lean on me." "I'll drag you down," Adler hissed. "Not leaving you," Daniel snapped. Adler didn't argue again, just nodded once, a silent agreement between brothers who had already bled together. The forest was no longer silent. German shouts echoed behind them. Bootsteps thundered. Branches snapped violently as soldiers pushed through the trees. Daniel glanced back. Lantern lights flickered between trunks. Rifles raised, shadows moving fast. And the dog, closing in. "Faster," Daniel urged. Adler gave a weak smirk. "Say it louder. Maybe my legs will listen." Even in hell, soldiers found humor. Then, a gunshot. The bullet cracked past Daniel's ear and shattered bark from a tree ahead. More shots followed. One tore through Daniel's sleeve. Another dug into the dirt near Adler's boot. "Zigzag!" Daniel shouted. They weaved between trees, stumbling, slipping, but alive. Until they hit the ditch. Daniel barely saw it in time. He yanked Adler with him, and they tumbled into a deep trench, left from some forgotten war. They landed hard, rolling through mud. Above them, the dog barked wildly, confused by their sudden disappearance. German voices overlapped, angry, searching. "We stay low," Daniel whispered. Adler nodded, pressing his hand over his wound. His blood soaked into the mud, dark and thick. Daniel felt something twist inside him. They were running out of time. Bootsteps approached the edge of the trench. Daniel slowly raised his rifle, breathing shallow, finger trembling on the trigger. He didn't want to fire. A gunshot would expose them. But if the Germans looked down... Adler's eyes met his. "If they find us, we fight." A soldier's silhouette appeared above, rifle hanging loose, scanning the dark trees. Daniel held his breath. The dog barked, pulling toward the trench. 1 second, 2, 3. Then the German cursed, yanked the dog away and moved on. Daniel exhaled slowly. They still had a chance. When the footsteps faded, Adler whispered, "We can't stay here." Daniel nodded. "We wait for them to move east. Then we go west." Adler leaned back, exhausted. "West? I still can't believe we're doing this." Daniel smiled faintly. "You chose to follow me." "I blame the concussion," Adler muttered. After a long moment, Adler's voice softened. "Cross. What if Sergeant Hale is still alive?" Daniel froze. He hadn't allowed himself to ask that question. The fear of the answer was too great. Adler continued quietly. "When the ambush hit, I saw him get thrown back. Not hit directly. He could have escaped deeper into the woods." Daniel's throat tightened. If Hale survived, if any of them survived... "We find shelter first," Daniel whispered. "Then, we look for him." Adler nodded. Daniel climbed the trench wall cautiously. Adler followed, jaw clenched in pain. At the top, the forest was still again. The Germans moving east. The western path open. Daniel glanced at Adler. "Ready?" Adler forced a grin. "Born ready. Just born in pain." Daniel chuckled softly. Then his voice hardened. "Let's finish what fate started." Together, they slipped back into the trees, deeper into enemy land. Running backward meant death. Running forward might mean something else. Hope. Or a grave. The deeper Daniel and Adler pushed into the forest, the stranger the silence became. It wasn't natural. It wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, like the woods themselves were warning them to turn back. Their breaths puffed white in the cold air. Exhaustion clung to them, but fear kept their legs moving. After nearly an hour, Adler's legs finally buckled. Daniel caught him before he hit the ground. "Easy, easy." Adler shook his head. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. His skin had gone pale, his lips nearly gray. Blood loss was draining him faster than he could fight it. Daniel scanned the forest desperately, searching for shelter, for anything that wasn't open sky and enemy danger. And then he saw it. Half buried beneath thick moss and decades of rot stood a reinforced steel door, crooked, rusted, old, an abandoned German bunker. "Adler," Daniel whispered, pointing. "There." Adler squinted. "That thing looks like it wants to collapse on our heads." "Better that than Germans shooting at us," Daniel replied. Adler nodded weakly. "Fair point." Daniel brushed away the dirt, gripping the handle. It resisted, then screeched open like a dying animal. Inside, nothing but pitch black. A cold draft seeped out, carrying the faint smell of rot and time. It wasn't safe, wasn't clean, wasn't warm, but it was hidden. And tonight, hidden was enough. Daniel helped Adler inside. The heavy door slammed shut behind them. Darkness swallowed everything. Daniel lit a match. The flame flickered, revealing cracked concrete walls, broken crates, and cobwebs hanging like curtains. He found an old lantern, struck another match. Light bloomed. Warm yellow glow filled the bunker, revealing scars of war etched into every surface. Adler slumped against a wall, trying to breathe steady. "You know," Adler whispered, "compared to dying outside, this place looks beautiful." Daniel sat beside him. "We rest for 2 hours. Then we move." Adler nodded, but his gaze drifted deeper into the darkness. "What's back there?" he asked. Daniel hadn't noticed at first, but now he saw it. A tunnel. A long, narrow passage disappearing into darkness. "Storage rooms, maybe," Daniel said. "Or another exit." "Or bodies," Adler murmured. The thought hung in the air like a ghost. Daniel forced himself to stay focused. He opened a crate, most of it rotten. But deep inside, bandages. Old, but sealed. "Lucky," Daniel whispered. Adler chuckled weakly. "Or cursed. Depends how you look at it." Daniel cleaned Adler's wound carefully. Adler gritted his teeth but didn't cry out. "You saved my life out there," Adler said quietly. Daniel paused. "You'd do the same." Adler shook his head. "Cross. You ran toward me. Toward danger. Not every man does that." Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't, because deep inside, he knew why he did it. Losing one more brother would have broken him. Then, a sound echoed from the tunnel. A metallic clink. Then another. Something shifting. Something moving. Adler whispered, "Animals don't make that sound." "No," Daniel whispered back. "They don't." The lantern flickered. A cold draft swept through the room. Daniel stepped forward, heart pounding, rifle raised. "Hello?" he whispered. His voice echoed down the tunnel, fading, twisting, returning. Then, a voice answered. Weak, broken, but human. "Help. Someone. Please." Daniel's heart stopped. Adler's eyes widened. "Cross. Is that—" Daniel didn't wait. He rushed into the tunnel because he recognized that voice. Sergeant Mason Hale. Alive. Buried somewhere in the darkness. Waiting for them. Daniel didn't feel the cold tunnel floor beneath his boots. He didn't feel the ache in his shoulder. He didn't feel fear. He felt only one thing. Hope. A fragile, burning hope that refused to die. "Sergeant Hale!" Daniel shouted, voice echoing off the concrete walls. For a moment, nothing. Then, a strained, familiar voice. "Cross. That you?" Adler limped closer, eyes widening. "He's alive." Daniel lifted the lantern, stepping deeper into the tunnel. Shadows stretched and twisted along the cracked walls. The air grew colder, heavier, like the bunker itself was holding its breath. "Sergeant Hale!" Daniel called again. A coughing fit answered him, followed by a voice that carried pain and stubborn fire. "Damn it, Cross, if you came back from me, you're a fool." Daniel pushed forward through a narrow bend. The lantern glow revealed a collapsed chamber, Concrete slabs, broken beams, sheets of dust hanging in the air, and beneath a fallen steel beam. He saw him. Sergeant Mason Hale. Bruised. Bleeding. Trapped. But alive. Daniel dropped beside him. Jesus, Mason, I thought you were... dead? Hale grunted. I thought you were smarter than that. Even now, Hale still had enough fight to mock him. Adler staggered in, breath shaking. Sergeant, you look terrible. Hale snorted. Good to see your humor survived the ambush. Daniel examined the beam crushing Hale's leg. It was massive. Far too heavy for one man. Even two. The collapse had turned this chamber into a tomb. How long have you been here? Daniel asked. Since the blast, Hale muttered. Got thrown in here. Everything came down. He exhaled sharply. I thought I was the only one left. Daniel gripped his arm. Not anymore. Hale looked at him, eyes tired, but burning with that old steel. Adler slid down the wall, clutching his wound. Hale nodded toward him. You treat that arm? Daniel nodded. As best I could. Hale grimaced. Listen, we can't stay here. The Germans are swarming these woods. Daniel and Adler exchanged a look. We know, Adler whispered. They chased us here. Hale's jaw tightened. Then I'm slowing you down. You can't lift this beam. You can't dig me out quietly. And you damn sure can't carry me for miles. Daniel stared at him, hurt, angry, refusing to accept it. You have to leave me, Hale said quietly. No, Daniel snapped instantly. Cross. No, Daniel's voice cracked. I'm not leaving you. Not again. Hale turned to Adler. You agree with him? Adler sighed. I'm too tired to argue with either of you. Daniel placed his hands on the debris. If we shift the rubble, even a little, he can slide out. Hale growled. You make one wrong move, this whole room collapses. Daniel's voice steadied into something fierce. Then we don't make a wrong move. Adler dragged himself to Daniel's side. On three, Daniel whispered. 1, 2, 3. They lifted. The beam didn't move. Again, they strained, muscles screaming, wounds reopening, blood dripping onto the dust. The beam shuddered, shifted, rose, just enough. Hale dragged himself free, collapsing into Daniel's arms. All three men breathed, alive, barely. Adler whispered, We did it. Hale forced a smirk. Idiots, both of you. Then, footsteps. Not one, many. Inside the bunker. Adler's voice trembled. Cross, they found us. And the three broken men realized they weren't getting out of this bunker without a fight. The bootsteps grew louder, slow, cautious, deliberate. Not the rush of men chasing a target. No, this was different. This was the sound of soldiers who knew something was waiting inside. Daniel extinguished the lantern immediately. Darkness swallowed the bunker whole. Adler sucked in a sharp breath. Hale clenched his jaw. Daniel whispered, so low it was barely sound. They're inside the bunker. Maybe 2. Maybe 3. Adler whispered back, they'll sweep the tunnel. They always sweep the tunnel. Hale's voice came steady despite the pain, that old command tone cutting through the dark. We hold them at the choke point. They enter one at a time. Narrow space. That's our only advantage. Daniel nodded silently. Outside, the boot stopped, murmuring, metal clicking, a breath drawn by someone preparing for violence. Then, a flashlight beam sliced through the tunnel darkness. A thin column of light crawled along the wall, shaking slightly, getting closer. Daniel pressed himself into shadow. Adler unsheathed his knife. Hale gripped a broken steel rod like a club. The light moved down the tunnel. Closer. Closer. A helmeted silhouette appeared. 1 step, 2, 3. Daniel exhaled. Now. He squeezed the trigger. The gunshot exploded in the tunnel. thunder punching through concrete. The German collapsed instantly. The flashlight clattered to the floor, spinning wildly. Shouting erupted behind him. "Mehr drin! Mehr drin!" More inside! More inside! Adler crawled forward, grabbed the flashlight, and switched it off. Darkness returned. Thick. Absolute. Hale whispered harshly, "Positions." Daniel ducked behind broken concrete. Adler slid to the opposite corner. Hale became a shadow against the wall. Weapon ready. The Germans didn't rush. They were trained. Disciplined. Dangerous. A single rifle barrel slowly peeked around the corner. Adler grabbed a pebble. Threw it right. Bullets screamed toward the sound, sparking against stone. Daniel fired 2 shots in return. A cry of pain echoed. The Germans retreated. Hale whispered, "They know we're hurt. They'll push harder." Daniel reloaded, hands shaking. "We need to end this fast." Adler whispered, "They might throw a grenade." Hale didn't hesitate. "If they do, you push it back." Silence fell. A dangerous silence. Then Daniel heard it. The soft, metallic clink of a grenade pin. His blood ran cold. "Grenade!" Something bounced into the tunnel. Time slowed. Adler lunged, grabbed the grenade, and hurled it back toward the entrance. It detonated mid-air. The shockwave slammed through the bunker, roaring fire and dust. Daniel crashed onto his knees, ears ringing. When he looked up, silhouettes charged in. 3, maybe 4. Daniel fired. Muzzle flashes bursting like lightning. Hale swung his steel rod, striking one soldier's knee, sending him down screaming. Adler stabbed another in the leg, dragging him into darkness. A German tackled Daniel, slamming him against the wall. They grappled, fighting for breath, for space, for survival. "You die here," the German growled. Daniel gasped, reaching blindly. His hand closed around the broken lantern. He smashed it into the soldier's face. The German screamed, staggered. Daniel drove his knife into the man's shoulder. The soldier collapsed. Silence. Heavy. Poisoned. Exhausted. Daniel coughed through the dust. "Adler! Hale!" Adler pushed himself upright, alive but trembling. Hale breathed heavily but conscious. Adler whispered, "Cross. We can't stay here. More will come." Daniel nodded. He knew what came next. This bunker was no longer a refuge. It was a trap, and time was running out. The bunker was no longer shelter. It was a tomb of smoke, and dust, and blood. Daniel wiped his forehead, not sure if the blood on his hand was his, or someone else's. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from knowing. They were out of time. Adler leaned against the wall, breathing in short, broken gasps. "Cross, if we stay even 5 more minutes..." "We won't," Daniel said. "We're moving. Now." Hale coughed, a harsh, rattling cough that echoed through the bunker. "Cross, you two go. Leave me a weapon. I'll hold them off." Daniel stared at him, jaw tight, eyes burning. "No." Hale's tone sharpened, the sergeant returning even through agony. "Cross, this isn't a suggestion." Adler groaned, pushing himself up the wall. "Sergeant, you're not dying in a hole. Not like this." Hale's eyes softened, not weakly, but with the weight of a man who had already accepted death. "I'm pinned. I slow you down. If you stay, we all die." Daniel slammed a fist into the concrete, the sound echoing like a broken heartbeat. He refused this. He refused to lose Hale. Not after this hell. Not after coming this far. Daniel leaned close, voice shaking. "We survived the ambush. We survived the patrol. We survived this bunker. I'm not watching you die now." Adler nodded weakly. "He's right. We have one move left. Get you out." Hale looked between them. 2 men who refused to abandon him. His voice cracked. "Boys, you're making a mistake." Daniel didn't even respond. He positioned himself at the steel beam. Adler limped over, joining him. On 3, Daniel whispered. 1, 2, 3. They lifted. The beam didn't move. Their muscles screamed. Their wounds tore open. Warm blood dripped into the dust. Stop, Hale barked. You'll crush yourselves. Daniel snarled through clenched teeth. Shut up, Hale! Adler shouted too, voice shaking from pain. Not dying here, Sarge. They lifted again. The beam trembled, shifted, groaned. And then it rose. Just enough. Just enough for Hale to drag himself free. His leg, mangled, twisted, bleeding, but alive. He collapsed into Daniel's arms. For a moment, none of them spoke. They were breathing, exhausted, but alive. Adler whispered, We did it. Hale smirked weakly. Damn idiots. Both of you. Then, footsteps. Dozens. Close. Too close. Adler froze. Cross. They're surrounding the bunker. Daniel listened. Voices outside, metal clanking. Commands shouted. Hale whispered, They're preparing a full breach. We can't fight this many, Adler said. Daniel scanned the bunker. The entrance was gone, flooded with enemies, but behind them, a collapsed wall, a narrow crack, barely wide enough for a man. A way out, maybe. Back exit, Daniel whispered. Adler frowned. That's not an exit. That's a burial hole. It's a chance, Daniel said, and it's all we have. Hale nodded. Help me up. Daniel and Adler lifted him. 3 broken men leaning on each other. They moved toward the crack. Behind them, the bunker door shattered. German soldiers stormed inside, shouting, reloading, preparing to kill whoever remained. Daniel crawled into the narrow passage first. Adler pushed Hale through behind him. The Germans flooded the bunker, but the 3 Americans had already vanished. Into the earth. Into the darkness. Into the only path left. The tunnel wasn't a path. It was a grave. Someone forgot to close. Daniel crawled on his elbows, dragging himself through dirt and roots. The walls brushed so close he could feel his heartbeat echoing off them. Every breath tasted like dust. Like earth. Like death. Behind him came Adler, pushing Hale forward inch by inch, with pain ripping through his wounded arm. Hale groaned softly with every movement. The earth groaned above them. Soil rained down. Wood braces creaked. The tunnel shifted, as if deciding whether to let them live or bury them forever. Cross, Adler whispered, panic trembling in his voice. If this collapses. It won't, Daniel lied, because hope was all they had left. Hale's voice came weakly from behind them. If I slow you down, leave me. Daniel didn't even look back. No. Cross. Hale's tone hardened. I'm already. I am not leaving you, Daniel snapped, voice cracking in the darkness. Silence followed. A heavy, emotional silence. They crawled deeper. His ribs scraped stone. His wounded shoulder burned like fire. His hands trembled with exhaustion. But he crawled. Forward. Because backward meant death. After minutes that felt like hours, the tunnel widened just enough for them to lift their heads. Daniel raised the lantern. Light, flickering off splintered beams and earth ready to collapse. Adler. How's your arm? Daniel asked. Adler gave a broken smile. Still attached. Barely counts as good news. Hale chuckled weakly. How far does this damn hole go? Daniel stared into darkness. If we're lucky, all the way out. And if we're not, Adler murmured. Daniel didn't answer. Then, a distant thud. Footsteps. Voices. German soldiers entering the bunker above. A dog barked. Closer. Adler's eyes widened. They're sending the dog in after us. Daniel's pulse spiked. We move. Now. He crawled faster, hands clawing through dirt, lungs burning, heart racing so hard it hurt. Behind them, Hale whispered, That dog will reach us in less than a minute. Daniel didn't respond. He just pushed harder. A German voice echoed behind them. Hier unten, der Hund hat sie. Down here. The dog has them, Adler cursed. They know. Cross. They know. Then, a miracle. A faint breeze. Cold. Clean. Fresh. Daniel froze. He raised the lantern. Ahead, the tunnel sloped upward. Moonlight leaked through a jagged slit in the earth. A way out. We're not dying in this hole, Daniel whispered. Move. But the dog barked again. So close now Daniel could hear its claws scraping the rock. Cross, Hale whispered. Give me your knife. Daniel frowned. Why? Hale met his eyes. Steady. Resigned. When that dog reaches us, I'll handle it. You two keep moving. No, Daniel said, not this time. Not ever. We stay together. Adler hissed suddenly. They're in the tunnel. A flashlight beam flickered behind them. Shouting erupted. Bootsteps hammered the ground. The dog snarled. Daniel turned, eyes fierce. Adler, help me lift Hale. Together they hoisted him upward toward the slit of moonlight. The tunnel filled with dust as the dog forced its way closer. Its low growl echoed like a nightmare. Hale reached the top, hands grabbing the grass outside. Adler climbed next, dragging himself upward. Daniel turned one last time. The dog appeared. Snarling. Leaping. Daniel fired. The blast shook the tunnel. Dust cascading from the ceiling. The dog tumbled backward, yelping. German soldiers shouted in chaos. Daniel crawled upward. Adler and Hale pulling him out of the earth with every ounce of strength left. Their hands grasped his wrist. A desperate final pull. And Daniel burst out of the soil into freezing night air. He gasped, breathing cold wind like it was life itself. Adler collapsed beside him. Hale dragged himself forward. All three men lay on the frosted grass, staring up at the silent moon, alive, barely, but alive. The Germans shouted below, but the night kept their voices distant. For the first time in hours, the forest was quiet, but survival was still far away. For a long moment, the world outside the tunnel didn't feel real. Cold wind brushed Daniel's face. Frost glittered on dead grass, and the moon hung low above them. Silent, pale, watching. Hale leaned against a tree stump, panting. Adler collapsed onto his elbows, trembling. Daniel stayed on his knees, breathing like a man reborn from the earth itself. Alive. Again. Adler whispered, voice shaking. We actually made it. Cross. We made it out. Daniel didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the dark hole behind them. The tunnel they had crawled through, the death they had escaped by inches. German voices echoed faintly from below, confused, angry, frustrated. But too far. Too slow. Too late. The three Americans had escaped. We have to move, Daniel said quietly. They'll come topside soon. Hale gave a dry, pained laugh. Son, if I could stand, I'd agree with you. Adler looked at Hale's mangled leg. Be honest, Sarge. Can you walk at all? Hale didn't look away. Not on my own. Daniel slid an arm under him, lifting him gently. Then you walk with me. Hale's voice softened. Cross. You've done enough. If you carry me, you'll slow yourself down. Daniel cut him off, whispering, We slow down together, or we don't go at all. Adler nodded. We finish this as a unit. Nobody gets left. Hale's eyes glistened. The unspoken emotion of a man who had led men into war and never expected them to come back for him. All right, he whispered. Let's go home. They moved. Slowly across the frosted clearing, three broken silhouettes under a dying moon. Every step was a battle. Every breath, earned. Minutes passed. Then Adler froze. Cross. Look. Daniel followed his gaze. Through the trees, barely visible, a flicker of light. Warm. Controlled. A fire. Could be Germans, Daniel whispered. Or Americans, Adler said. Hope trembling in his voice. Hale exhaled sharply. There was a recon unit. Northwest of here. Before the ambush. They might have survived. Daniel steadied Hale's weight. Then we head northwest. They pushed forward, limping, dragging, breathing through pain that would have killed weaker men. Every rustle felt like danger. Every shadow like a rifle barrel. Finally, they reached a slope overlooking a narrow valley. Daniel's eyes widened. Below them, helmets, rifles, American silhouettes moving around a small defensive camp. Home, Daniel whispered. Adler let out a broken laugh. I'm actually going to cry. Hale squeezed Daniel's shoulder. Signal them. Before they think we're the enemy. Daniel raised one hand. Friendly. Friendly Americans. A spotlight swung toward them, blinding, sharp. Rifles lifted. Identify yourselves, a voice shouted. Daniel forced his voice through the cold. Private Daniel Cross, Private Adler Brooks, Sergeant Mason Hale. We survived the ambush. Silence. Then, an eruption of voices. Not fear, disbelief. A miracle. Medics rushed up the slope. Soldiers grabbed Daniel and Adler, supporting them. Two men lifted Hale onto a stretcher, treating him with a reverence usually reserved for men risen from the dead. A medic inspected Daniel's injuries. How the hell did you make it this far? Daniel looked at Adler. Adler looked at Hale. Hale closed his eyes, whispering. We walked into death, and somehow came back. Daniel finally let himself feel everything he'd buried since the ambush. The fear, the guilt, the relentless hope that refused to die. A young soldier approached him gently. You're safe now. All of you. Daniel nodded. Slowly, gratefully. He turned back toward the forest, toward the shadows they had escaped. Many men never walked out of that darkness. Many names would remain there forever. But tonight, 3 men beat the odds. 3 men crawled out of the grave. 3 men returned from a place that was ready to claim them. Adler limped beside Daniel. You know, he murmured, they're going to think we're invincible after this. Daniel smirked faintly. We're not. Adler smiled. Yeah. But tonight, it felt like we were. Daniel looked up at the sky. Quiet. Vast. Forgiving. And for the first time since the ambush, he let himself breathe. The nightmare was over. The dawn would come. And the soldier who walked alone into death had finally come back.